everybody, and welcome to another episode of Cinema Heroes. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm Jay Stu.
And today we're talking about Venom. Released in 2018, directed by Ruben Fleischer. Written by, gotta look at the case for this one, Jeff Pinkner and Scott Rosenberg and Kelly Marcel, from a story by Jeff Pinkner and Scott Rosenberg. And starring Tom Hardy, Michelle Williams, Riz Ahmed, Jenny Slate, and that's really all I know. A couple other people are listed on the back of the movie, or the back of the Blu-ray.
Yeah.
Scott Hayes and Reed Scott, but I'm not entirely sure.
I have no idea who they are.
Yeah, exactly. So my big question for you, Stu, is were you excited about this movie? Was the anticipation there for you?
No. I was not excited about it, but I wasn't like not looking forward to it. I was like, I'll see it when I see it.
You were intrigued, perhaps?
Yeah, I was intrigued. I was intrigued. I was definitely interested. But yeah, to say I was excited, no, I was not excited.
Yeah, I think that's where I fall too, because I mean, it just, and I probably will say this about 800 times through this episode, but it just seemed weird to make a Venom movie without Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And so that part made me not excited for it, but Tom Hardy being in it made me intrigued. And then the first trailer that came out where we actually saw Venom and what he kind of looked like, and I thought, okay, well, that looks cool at least. So I was curious as to how it would go. But just the whole idea of making a Venom movie without Spider-Man, it just seemed weird. His whole origin is so directly connected to Spider-Man that it just, it seemed bizarre to make a movie without Spider-Man being in it. But that's what Sony's doing.
I agree. I 100% agree. They're doing a Spider-Man cinematic universe
without Spider-Man.
Yeah, more than half the movies don't have Spider-Man. And like, what sense does that make?
Yeah.
But no, I'm in the same boat. I saw the trailer and I was like, okay, that does look terrible. And Tom Hardy being in it made me a little more confident that it wasn't going to be horrible. But I still went in with like super low expectations because, like you said, it's a Venom movie without Spider-Man. It's only going to be so good.
Right. Well, and I assume you saw this in the theater?
Yes, I saw it in the theater.
So what was your initial reaction walking out of the theater?
I went in with sub-zero expectations, and
sometimes that helps, Yeah,
it definitely helps.
Yeah.
I did find myself enjoying the movie.
Yeah.
I thought it was cheesy, but it got the job done. It entertained me. It's not the world's greatest comic book movie, but I got some enjoyment out of it. I think this is the 5th or 6th time I've watched this movie. This is actually like one of the movies I put on like go to sleep.
Oh yeah, okay.
But that doesn't mean like it's boring or I didn't.
Right.
I do like the movie, but that's probably why I've seen it so many times, because it's something that it's a turn your brain off movie.
Sure. Yeah, I think I felt the exact same way. I was pleasantly surprised by it. I didn't love it. I didn't walk out of it going, "Oh my God, that was the greatest thing ever." But I also walked out of it going, "All right, Venom looked cool. Tom Hardy did a pretty good job, It's still weird that Spider-Man's not in this movie, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was okay. This is actually only the second time I've watched it all the way through. I saw it in the theater. And then I was in Augusta visiting my wife's family, and they had it on, and I saw like the last half of it at their house. And so this is only the second time I've watched it from beginning to end.
Mm-hmm. It's probably the third time that I watched it from the beginning to end, because those other times were obviously to go to sleep.
Yeah, right. So you've seen the first half of the movie probably a few times, but
yes.
I was actually surprised that Venom, the actual like comic looking Venom, doesn't show up until about an hour into the movie. Yeah. And the movie's not even that long. It's listed as being 112 minutes, but the credits start playing at about an hour and 34 or something like that. So, and then you got the post credit scene, and then at least the copy I watched has the spider, like a extended Spider-Verse scene
Mm-hmm.
at the end to kind of promote that movie. But so yeah, it's not really that long of a movie.
It's not. It's not.
I do like that the movie opens in space, so that they are actually alien symbiotes, and it wasn't something that they
Mm-hmm.
concocted in a lab or something.
Right.
But and Carlton Drake, I tried to do a little research about Venom's history, and I was curious if Riot existed in the comics, and Carlton Drake is actually in the comics. The Life Foundation is in the comics. I don't believe Carlton Drake ever became Riot, but
Yeah, I don't remember that. I'm not too familiar with the like I guess Venom lore,
right.
but I knew that Riot was in the comics, but I just assumed that uh everything else was kind of accurate, I
Made
guess.
right, yeah,
And
yeah.
or came from somewhere and they didn't just make it up.
Gotcha. Yeah, I wasn't sure. Venom is one of those characters that he was created in like 91.
Yeah.
And so he's always been around in my Spider-Man knowledge, I guess you could
Same.
say. But really, I think I only know Venom truly from I've obviously seen images of him. I don't
Yeah.
think I never read like the Amazing Spider-Man back in 91 when he became introduced. So it was the Spider-Man cartoon show.
Yeah.
And just seeing images of him. He was very popular, and he actually, a little research like I said I did today, he was considered Spider-Man's like third arch nemesis. So it was Green Goblin, Doc Ock, and Venom. He made it to the top 3, which is pretty impressive for being.
I always assumed that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
But I mean,
like you said, he was so popular, especially in the 90s.
right.
And he's a very 90s villain. Like
Yeah, he is.
like just his whole aesthetic, just like hard rock and roll, heavy
Right.
like it's just
Yeah.
he's a very 90s character, but he's cool. He's cool. He's like, he's evil Spider-Man, and
Right. And I was reading the reason he kind of got created was the writer. So it was interesting because the alien symbiote Spider-Man costume was actually created by a few different writers and artists, and then Venom was created by, and I'm not going to remember the guy's name, but Todd McFarlane was the artist, and then I forget the writer's name. I apologize, I should have written it down. But he came up with the idea to use that symbiote suit to create a villain where Spider-Man's spider sense doesn't work, essentially. And so that was one of the things, like Venom's kind of one of his powers, I guess you could say, is that he doesn't trigger Spider-Man's spider sense.
huh.
And so, because that was one of the things, like with
I
Spider-Man.
forgot about that. Like,
Yeah, I actually didn't know that.
yeah, like I knew that and I forgot about that. Wow. You're right.
And so I thought that was kind of interesting because, with all the other villains, if he gets into a fist fight or whatever, his spider sense goes off. So he can kind of, he's got kind of an upper hand. But with Venom, he doesn't have that, which is kind of really interesting. Like,
Yeah.
and I like, he really is. Since he had the black suit, he's got the white spider on his chest, at least the classic Venom does.
Mm-hmm.
And so he really is kind of like the evil Spider-Man, and he doesn't trigger the spider sense. That was the other thing. Like, obviously Venom looks very similar to how he looks in the comics in this movie, but obviously he doesn't have the white spider because why would he?
Right. Apparently Spider-Man doesn't exist in these movies.
Yeah, which is so weird.
Which is weird. It's a Spider-Man universe,
right,
without Spider-Man.
right. And Eddie even talks about how he used to live in New York and how he's still, because Michelle Williams, I think, said something about how he was run out of New York, and he was like, I wasn't run out of New York. He's like, I still have, I forget what he says, pull in New York or whatever.
Yeah.
And so there's like that little hint that, he used to be in New York. That's where Spider-Man is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, but based on later movies and other movies, Spider-Man doesn't exist in this universe, which is just bizarre.
That's weird. I don't understand it. You have exclusive access to
Right.
the world's most marketable superhero, and you don't use them. Like,
I don't know. Yeah, was it something with Marvel, like their deal with Marvel that Tom Holland couldn't be in these movies or something, or I don't know.
I don't see I don't see that happy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it was like maybe the timeline of the MCU because this was before the multiverse was established. So
Right.
maybe it was that. Maybe it was something like that. I don't know.
I just feel
They
like
didn't want to mess with
some
the
executive
continuity.
at Sony said they looked at what Marvel did with having all these solo films and then bringing everybody together for the Avengers, and they said we could do that. And they're like, well, how? Somebody else goes, how, boss? We only have Spider-Man. He goes, yeah, but we've got Spider-Man's villains, so we'll do each movie, And somebody said, okay. I don't know. It's just because this seems to be what they're doing. We've got
No,
Venom,
yeah, for sure.
Morbius. We've got Kraven the Hunter coming out. They're clearly setting up like a Sinister Six type thing. But the other thing is, by making these characters the main character of the movie, you can't make them villains.
Yeah,
Essentially, they have to be like anti-heroes.
anti-heroes, and that's pretty much what they've done so far. Venom, he's not a hero. I mean, I think he's actually more hero than villain in this movie.
Yes, I agree.
But he's still not very quote unquote heroic.
Right. They
Yeah.
tried. So they try to make him seem like. I mean, they do a decent job of making him an anti-hero, and and I think the movie actually does a pretty decent job of Venom wants to eat anybody.
Yeah.
And Eddie is the one that's like, okay, no, we can't do that. And so Eddie's kind of the moral compass, I guess you could say, of the two. But so there's that, but in the comics, I mean, the whole thing with Eddie hates Peter, and
Yeah.
so I don't know. So I don't know. Who knows if the Sony Sinister Six thing is actually going to ever happen, or if they'll just keep putting out a couple of villain movies and then it'll fade away. But
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up with Tom Hardy, with Eddie. Uh, I like Eddie in this movie, but he's not Eddie Brock.
right,
He's somebody else. Like this character is cool, like for this movie, but I don't want to see this Eddie Brock interact with Spider-Man.
right,
I'm not gonna buy that.
right. Especially if it's Tom Holland's Spider-Man.
Yeah.
It just I don't see it working. I agree. I like Eddie in this movie too. I remember before starting it today, I remember I was thinking, I don't like how they made Eddie Brock like a journalist for a news channel.
Mm-hmm. I do like that. I do like that they made him a journalist.
Yeah.
I don't like that they made him like a buffoon.
Right. Well, yeah. I was gonna say.
I mean, I like it for the movie because it fits the tone of the movie, but I don't think that would go well with Spider-Man.
Right. I agree. But I was gonna say, watching it today, like that whole there's like a little montage of kind of like, I guess it'd be like his show opening, where he shows him kind of at different locations and being like, this is the Eddie Brock report. It actually wasn't as bad as I remembered. And so I was like, okay, it's actually not terrible. I can kind of buy it. But you're right. They make Eddie kind of a buffoon in this, and he gets fired very quickly for doing investigative journalism. Right. Although he did look at a confidential email from his girlfriend, but
yeah,
or fiance, I guess it was his fiance. Michelle Williams, that's another actress who this is not her typical type of movie.
No, she normally does dramas.
Yeah,
and like thrillers.
Yep, I remember reading when she got cast. I don't know. I feel like I remember her saying something like it's just. This was a movie that was kind of out of her comfort zone. She wasn't used, even though there's not a whole lot of, or at least not that I saw any scenes with her where there's a lot of green screen. But she was talking about how she's never really done one of those movies where it's a lot of green screen and you're not really looking at something. You're looking at like a tennis ball on a stick, which later becomes Venom or something. And so I think she wanted to try something new and get out of her comfort zone a little bit. Yeah, it's just interesting because she doesn't usually go for superhero movies or action movies. She usually does Manchester by the Sea or something.
Yeah,
which was really good,
I think the only things that I had seen her in before this were Shutter Island and Deception.
Oh yeah, Dawson's Creek. You didn't watch Dawson's Creek?
No, I didn't watch that.
I didn't really watch Dawson's Creek either, but I remember the first episode came on when I was in high school, and I don't. Maybe I did watch it because but I remember going into school the next day and everybody going, Dawson's just like you, and I was like, what? Because I was a big movie guy, and Dawson is a big Spielberg fan. He wants to be a film director on the show and stuff.
Oh, okay.
And so I was like, oh, all right. But so I did watch. I think I must have watched the first season a little bit. I was just like, this show's not for me. But I did like that aspect of
I knew that before watching the show. The show wasn't for
me. But she was big on that. That was the first thing I ever saw her in, was on Dawson's Creek. And then her, out of all four of those actors, I would say she's had the best career. Katie Holmes probably the second best. But Michelle Williams has gone on to be nominated for a couple Academy Awards and whatnot. So she's doing quite well.
Katie Holmes hit her peak early.
Yeah, well, and I was trying, I don't know, I can't think of very many Katie Holmes movies since Batman Begins, really, but she also had her child with Tom Cruise, and she's kind of, I think, done less since then.
Yeah.
But James Van Der Beek, he does stuff occasionally. I mean, I'm sure they're all doing pretty well, but I can't tell you the last time I saw James Van Der Beek in something. And then Jonathan Jackson, I think that's his name. Jonathan Jackson.
Yes.
Or is it Joshua Jackson?
Or Joshua Jackson. Jonathan Jackson is
the dude from
another actor.
Camp Nowhere, right? Yeah. Joshua Jackson. He was on Fringe, which was a show I kind of liked for a while, but stopped watching for whatever reason. But since that has gone off the air, I think has done other stuff, but I just haven't really.
Yeah, he's been doing a few things on TV. The last thing I saw him in was the limited series on ABC, Little Fires Everywhere.
Oh, cool! Yeah. I
didn't
know he was in that. I read that book.
Yeah, that's a great series.
Yeah.
I'll
have to check that out.
Yeah, you would like it. You would like it. But I haven't seen Michelle Williams in much. Just those two movies. Right. And I forgot she was in Dawson's Creek.
Right.
Until you mentioned it. So.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, that was just a really long way of saying this is not her typical movie. And she doesn't. Her character. I don't know. It's she has a couple good moments, but do you think her character is underutilized, or how do you feel about like Anne as a character from a writing standpoint?
I don't like her.
Right. Okay.
Now that's not to say that I don't like Michelle Williams. Michelle Williams, she's fine. She's not given.
Right. That's kind of how I feel.
Do. She's only there just to just for her boyfriend, the doctor.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true actually. If she had not,
he's more useful than she is.
Right. If she had not started dating a doctor, Eddie probably would have maybe still gone to her when he was first infected.
Mm-hmm.
But there's nothing she could have done for him.
Right. He would have died.
right. And so that would have been it. And then she does show up kind of at the end. She does have that moment where she takes on the symbiote and takes it to Eddie.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of, that's what amazes me about the fact that she took the role, because I feel like it's not a great written part for her.
It was a paycheck.
Well, that's true too. That's very true too. Al Pacino once said, "The worse the script, the better the paycheck," which is kind of sad, but
that makes
funny.
sense.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Robert De Niro. He got a lot of paycheck films.
Well, for sure. Yeah. Well, like Pacino does too. Yeah.
Yeah. Like half of his filmography is paycheck films.
Nothing wrong with that, I guess, even though it sucks for Robert De Niro fans.
No, I mean, no, I'm a Robert De Niro fan. I just,
sure.
His the quality of his filmography is overshadowed by the the greatness that he
Right.
has put on screen. So
Right. And even despite all the paycheck movies,
mhm.
whenever Robert De Niro passes away, he will. I mean, he even before he passes away, he is considered one of the best actors of all time,
Absolutely,
and has made some of the greatest movies of all time. And same with
absolutely.
Al Pacino. And so, um, but yeah. So, but guess you can't fault people for taking a paycheck.
No, no. I mean, at the end of the day, you want to keep working.
For sure. Yeah,
So,
for sure. Riz Ahmed as Carlton Drake. What do you think about him?
um, again, another actor that is wasted. um, I don't like. This movie's not. He does not have a good villain. I don't like the villain. I like Riz Ahmed's performance.
Agreed.
Um, but he was wasted, and I think that he could have been at least. I don't know. I don't think it's the fault on Riz Ahmed. I think it's the fault on the director. I think he should have been directed at a more um menacing direction,
Mm-hmm.
especially towards the middle of the film or towards the end of the film when he finally achieved symbiosis with
Right.
Riot. Um, because I like how he starts off subtle, but his it's as if his character isn't written meaty enough to warrant such subtlety, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, he's fairly two dimensional.
He's two dimensional. Yeah, for sure.
That's how I feel. I think Riz Ahmed is a great actor, and I think he does
Hmm.
a good job with what he's given.
Hmm.
But he's not given a lot. It's they tried to make him seem like he's this like everybody else in the world kind of sees him as this good person who's here to save lives and stuff. It's
Hmm.
like that scene where with the little girl, and
Yeah.
she goes to ask the question. He's like, "No, don't silence her." He's like, "That's what people try to do, silence us from asking questions." And that scene cracked me up. He does address it. He does say so and so can answer your question, but like he
Right.
never actually lets the girl ask the question. He's he's like, "Don't let anybody silence you from asking questions." All right, I've got to go, and so I'll see you. That kind of cracked me up. But like that scene doesn't, in my opinion, make him come across as like a likable person or anything. And then Riz Ahmed's character does terrible things in the movie.
Hmm.
He's testing people, and he doesn't care when one of his test subject dies. He
Hmm.
kills Jenny Slate's character. But at the same time, like you said, he doesn't come really across, and I don't think it's Riz Ahmed's fault. I agree. I think it's either the writing or the directing. He just doesn't come
Hmm.
across as menacing.
Right.
Like I feel like Tom Hardy without Venom could just like one punch take out Riz Ahmed,
Yeah,
and like
and
and that
that'll be
would
the
be
end
it.
of it.
Right. There's actually a scene towards the end of the film where they both I think there's this part where Riot like basically eats Venom and
Mhm.
become like both symbiotes are one, and he starts climbing the rocket, and Michelle Williams' character actually like I guess there's outside speakers or something. She turns up the
Yeah, he
volume
turns
of
on the
something,
volume. Yeah.
and they fall, and so both characters actually get knocked out of their symbiotes,
Hmm.
and Riz Ahmed gets up and punches Tom Hardy, and I didn't buy it. I was like, I
Nah.
don't
Nope.
see Riz Ahmed.
Nope.
Like Riz
That
Ahmed,
would not happen. That
good
would not
actor, but
happen.
Tom Hardy, like I just think of Tom Hardy from like Warrior, and I'm like, nope, nope, nope. And so that I didn't buy that at all. But yeah, I wish there was a better villain in this movie. And Riot himself, I think, looks weird. He looks like a Muppet to me. I understand
His
they have to.
Yeah, his face is really wide but pointy at the same time.
Yeah.
It's weird. I was not a
You know what
fan
it
of
kind
it.
of weirdly reminds me of? Like I'm looking at, and I don't know why they put Riot on the back of the Blu-ray prominently right
Yeah,
here.
he's on the back of my 4K as well.
Uh, it reminds me of, you remember in Beetlejuice when Alec Baldwin pulls his face
Yeah.
and then has his like eyeballs on his fingers or something. That's what it reminds me of. And so I just can't take it seriously. He just
He looks
doesn't.
like a hand puppet.
Yes, exactly. He looks like a hand puppet. And what I was about to say is I understand they had to make him look different than Venom so that we could kind of tell who was who.
Mm-hmm.
They could have done a better job.
Yeah, they
Like he
definitely
just,
could have done a better job. But he feels very generic.
yes.
Um, and the design doesn't help it because he's already kind of written generically, and then the design is generic. It's like it was not well thought out.
Right.
Um, this it and that's kind of the problem with this movie. It's cookie cutter.
Yeah.
The story is very cookie cutter. There's not a lot to it. Um, but the thing is, like, it's got a great cast, but they're underutilized. And really, the only person that is giving a strong performance is Tom Hardy, and you can clearly tell he's having fun making this movie.
Right. Yeah.
But if it weren't for Tom Hardy, I don't know if I would. I don't know how I would feel about this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and I don't think Riz Ahmed does a bad job.
No,
It's just like
nobody does a bad job. It's just,
right.
yeah.
Tom Hardy is the most fun to watch in the film. And
Mhm.
part of that is the whole him kind of fighting himself, and I do like. I wasn't sure how I felt about it based off the preview, but I do actually kind of like the whole back and forth between him and Venom.
Mhm.
There's a couple of good moments with that, but yeah, Tom Hardy definitely looks like he's having fun, and I can understand why he took the role. That
Yeah.
gives him he's got doing some stuff like we haven't really seen him do before. He's but yeah, but overall I agree. I think the movie is very kind of cookie cutter. It's even some of the special effects aren't great.
They're not. Because although I do like the design of Venom,
Yeah.
they could have done better. He's a little. I don't know. He looks blurry and shiny at the same time. It's weird.
Right. Yeah. The scene
Hey,
that's
Riot
on.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And I think one of the I don't know if they'll ever make it look good. Maybe it'll just be one of those things that's always, something that looks good in comic books, but just can never really translate to film.
Yeah.
But like when you see Tom Hardy's face, like as Venom's kind of going over it, or like at the very end when it reveals
It
half
looks
of
like
his
face was like floating in the CGI abyss.
And same thing happened with Riz Ahmed towards the end. Like there's a couple moments during that big fight scene between Riot and Venom where the symbiote kind of expands and we see Tom Hardy and Riz Ahmed kind of in there, and it doesn't look great.
Doesn't look good at all.
And I'm watching
the scene. It's a cool concept,
right? Yeah.
Like what's happening in the scene is cool. Just the execution of the CGI is not there.
Right. And the scene I'm watching right now is the motorcycle escape or whatever you want to call it. And there's a lot you can tell close-ups of Tom Hardy. You can just tell he's in front of a green screen. It's just
yes. That scene is about to start on mine right now.
I was going to ask you about that scene. Do you think the motorcycle would have gone that high when he makes that jump?
Absolutely not.
Exactly. It's so high.
No.
I didn't I was like, really? I mean, I kind of like the whole idea of him going, like jumping and letting go of the motorcycle and being like, and Venom pulling him back towards the motorcycle. I thought that was kind of neat.
I did not like that.
Oh, okay.
I didn't like that because
it's just
the film tried to
ridiculously high in the air.
Yeah. it tried to make that moment feel bigger than it was. I'm like, that's it.
That was like a big trailer moment. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, I guess.
I don't mind that part, but the part I like better in the motorcycle scene is when Tom Hardy goes, "That's a dead end," and Venom goes, "Not for us," and he like grabs the railing and like slingshots the motorcycle over that.
Like that.
That part was actually all right, but again, the CGI is not great in the scene, and so that kind of ruins some of it for me.
Yeah, and I guess the dialogue or the banter in this scene, I don't really care for
between Eddie and Venom.
Yeah. It's specifically this scene. it feels again very generic and cookie cutter. One moment that was uh that felt awkward or sounded awkward was when I can't even remember when he said it in during the scene, but he said Tom Hardy said, "Are you out of your mind?" And it was the way he said it that was like, "You overdoing
Yeah.
it." And it felt very actory, and I'm like, "That you better than that, Tom." um, and there was another scene or another part in the scene. It's at the end of the scene when he flipped over the car and Eddie looks back and says, "Whoa, that was really cool." Like it
Oh
sounded
yeah. I
it
don't like that
sounded
scene
like
either.
a Capri Sun commercial.
Yeah. Uh, that part bothers me too because it's too long. Like if he had just looked back
Yeah,
and been like, "Whoa," and then slammed into that car, because the whole idea is he's looking back so that he can hit that car
right.
and fly off the motorcycle and blah blah blah. But it goes on too long. He looks behind him and he's like, "Wow, that was crazy. You flipped that car." Like it's
Yeah.
just was it doesn't work for me
That's
either.
that's poor editing. That's what that is.
Yeah. Yeah, it really should have just been him looking back and going, "Holy," like "holy" or "whoa" or whatever, and then
Yeah.
immediately hitting the car. Yeah, it was probably. I mean, it's. I don't think the comedy necessarily doesn't work in this movie, but that's one of the scenes that I think was supposed to be funny. It's
And was not.
and it was yeah, it just doesn't work.
No.
Um, it's
The
funny.
comedy
I feel
works
like I'm. Go ahead.
uh the comedy works for the most part. It's just like you said, moments like that it feels out of place, it feels forced.
Yeah.
Um and it's just I don't think they try very hard with the dialogue.
Right.
It feels like this movie feels like a second or third draft.
Yeah.
I know movies go through like 6, 7, 8
Right.
drafts. Some more than that. They are like rewriting the movie even on set. But
Right.
it feels like this movie only had 2 or 3 drafts.
And then somebody went perfect or
Yeah.
good enough, and
Hey,
then
good
yeah.
enough. Yeah. It'll
Um.
do.
Right. Right. Uh. Yeah. And Ruben Fleischer, the director, the only other movie that I can think of that he directed was Zombieland.
Mhm.
So
Which
I
is
feel like
a really good movie.
it is a good movie, and I wonder if Ruben Fleischer is just maybe stronger with. Well, I don't know because the CGI in this movie is not great. I was gonna say maybe he just is stronger with visuals than he is maybe with story. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. I also don't know if that's fair because who knows what kind of studio notes or
And
decisions got
that's what I
made.
was
Right.
thinking. I was thinking it was this movie probably had a lot of studio notes and he made a safe movie. This movie feels very safe. Like
Right.
it's not truly what the fans want, but I don't it's not quite enough to piss everybody off.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
it's like he's on thin ice with this movie, but it's not it's it feels very safe. It's like
Yeah.
you just got the job done.
Right.
It's competent. The movie is competent. I will say that, but it lacks a lot of nuance and character. It don't
Right.
like the movie don't really feel like it has a an identity.
Right. Right. And even some of the relationships, like I didn't really buy Tom Hardy and Michelle Williams. The beginning, like when they're together and stuff, it just, I don't know. It didn't feel, it felt like
They have
actors.
they had no chemistry.
Right. Yeah.
Zero chemistry.
So I don't know. It's funny. I feel like we've talked nothing but negatively about the movie, and I don't actually hate the movie.
I don't.
Um, but yeah, it's there's just a lot about it that I guess, and Ruben Fleischer didn't come back for the sequel, so I wouldn't be surprised if he fought with the studio a lot and lost a
Probably.
lot of battles and said, you know what, I don't want to do part two.
Probably.
Um, I personally think what they should have done, and this was before, no, this was after Logan, wasn't it? Logan was 2017 or something, right?
2017,
Yeah.
and this was
2018.
2018. Yeah.
Yeah. But I was gonna say what they should have done is made this an R-rated like horror film.
Yes.
And I think
Agreed.
that would have been a really cool way to do Venom. And I think not having Spider-Man in the movie, doing it R-rated, dark, horror, I think that would have pleased fans more than this movie did.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's what it suffers from the most is not having that identity. I think a
Right.
horror movie would have been perfect for it, because I think people would be a little bit more forgiving of um of the CGI,
Yeah.
and just a better story. I think a well written movie is leaps and bounds better than a pretty movie.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
People know a bad story when they see one.
Right.
Um,
And I think that's very well said too, because if you have if a movie has an incredible story,
mhm.
but the CGI is just not quite there, we'll forgive that.
Yeah.
But if a movie has a crappy story and the CGI also sucks,
Yeah,
like,
right.
then we're not going to forgive that.
Right.
Then we're just going to think you just don't care, you know? Um,
I'll even go as far as to say I'll take a good aesthetic over uh average average CGI or just a pretty movie,
mhm.
because if I don't if I don't feel this world,
Right.
you lost me.
Right.
Um because the look, like I said, the look of the movie is important, but you got to make me care other than spectacle.
Right. Yeah.
Um
If your characters are 2D,
yeah.
and the world doesn't feel real and the characters don't have any chemistry with each other, yeah, it's not gonna no amount of good CG is gonna fix
No.
that. So
No. Like this movie had potential. It reminds me a lot of Daredevil. Um
the Ben Affleck Daredevil.
and it had a yeah, like that. You could tell that, I know we talked about it on the I think it was Ghost Rider
Yeah, yeah,
episode, but you could tell that director of Daredevil, he tried. He really wanted to make a good
yeah,
movie.
yeah, yeah,
And I get that vibe from this movie, because I do have some enjoyment about
yeah.
it. I know, like you said, we have been talking negatively about it, but I don't want people to think that I don't like the movie. I like the movie. It's just that it's bittersweet, because you see what the movie could have been.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's I think it's also for me it's bittersweet because like I like the look of Venom in this movie, and
As do I.
the scene that's on right now is the scene where he's kind of taking out like the SWAT team, and I actually think this scene is really well
Oh
done.
yeah, mask copy.
Yeah,
That's my favorite part of the movie, actually.
and so I think this is really cool, and this is kind of the Venom I want to see and stuff.
Yes.
And if it had been a Spider-Man movie, or Spider-Man had been in it, like that would have been incredible. But yeah, no. So I'm right there with you. I think I actually do enjoy the movie. I think, now I was gonna save this for the end when we get into ratings, but our friend AJ does something I think that's brilliant on his Letterboxd reviews. He has a critic score and then an enjoyment score.
Yeah.
And when I first saw that, I thought that is genius because this is a perfect example where my critic score would be much lower than my enjoyment score. Like
Exactly.
I actually enjoy the movie. I like watching it. I don't know how many stars. I'm still debating on how many stars I'm going to give it at the end here, but
I'm going back and forth.
right, yeah, exactly. But I know, my critic score would be less stars.
Yeah.
And so that's why I am indecisive about how many stars to give it on this episode, because should I go with my enjoyment score or should I go with my critic score? I'm probably going to go with my enjoyment score. Because I don't think this podcast is a necessarily like a critical, like we're not film criticism really. We're guys talking about movies. So I'll probably go with my enjoyment score.
Welcome
but
to superheroes. movies and superhero, where we discuss superhero films.
Open up your bottle of wine or I don't know. Pour yourself a cup of tea and we'll talk about films. So yeah, I actually was gonna message AJ and be like, can I steal that? Because there's a couple movies where, I feel like my critic score would be different than my enjoyment score.
I think he'll let you steal it.
I'm sure. Yeah.
With my ratings, my ratings are typically critic scores.
Yeah.
But the enjoyment, my enjoyment may sweeten the deal a little bit. But
yes.
I was gonna mention a movie, but we haven't reviewed it yet, so I don't want to mention that movie.
Oh, okay, all right.
We're at the part where I'm at the part where she just walked in on him attacking all the cops.
Oh yeah, so she sees him as Venom, and I did kind of like that aspect of the film that it's not a secret identity.
Yeah,
I mean it is for everybody else, but like she finds out, and so she knows that. Although at the very end of the movie he keeps it from her, which I thought was weird, but because the very end of the movie when they're talking,
because
she's like, "I'm sorry about Venom," and then because we never see we see Venom become like a parachute and get hit with the fire, and we know fire doesn't is dangerous to the symbiotes,
right?
And so he even yells Venom no and drops into the water, and then it fades to black, and we fast forward however long it is, and so she goes, "I'm sorry about Venom," so that makes the audience and it's supposed to make the audience think that Venom is dead, but then we hear Venom talk to him in his head, and so he does keep it from her for whatever reason. I don't know why.
Why?
I don't know. I mean, clearly he's not like he spends most of this movie like sick, and we find out like the symbiote is like killing him, but then Venom says like I can fix it, which is weird. I don't know. Right. I guess he was feeding off of his organs and stuff, and so if he eats, if he gets like different nutrition, then he can heal Tom Hardy's insides. So now that he's not sick anymore, I don't know why he keeps it a secret. If he's like, well, hey, actually he's still here, but we've figured out how to make it work. I don't know. Well, it's like it's a weird thing because obviously if Venom ever shows up in like the news or something, she's gonna know it's him. Right. It's just
so. What's the point of keeping it a secret?
Right. Exactly.
I wonder if they addressed that in Venom. Let There Be Carnage, because I've only seen the movie once, and
same here. I don't recall.
Yeah, I don't recall.
I do feel like,
but I don't recall much from the movie.
I think in the second one she knows, but I don't think she's surprised.
Yeah,
so I think they might just
drop it. Yeah,
I think they just ignore it. Yeah, they just ignore the fact that that they ended the movie this way.
I think they recognize it didn't make sense.
Right, yeah. Just because this scene's on right now, I do like how when Eddie finally gets the Venom kind of out of him at the doctor's at the hospital. I like how Venom takes over the little dog.
Oh yeah,
and the little dog walks up to Michelle Williams, and she see the eyes kind of do its thing.
Yeah. Now,
what did you?
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask you, what did you think about Riot? I mean, we see Riot. We don't know it's Riot yet, but we see a symbiote take over like a paramedic in the very beginning of the film. And then it goes from person to person until it's this little girl. And then this little girl just wanders into the Life Foundation in San Francisco. I don't know if she was at the San Francisco airport, but we see her originally at an airport. Her parents don't like where. It's just weird to me that this little girl just wanders into the Life Foundation.
That's crazy you asked me about that, because I was gonna ask you the same thing. Like, well, really, I was gonna ask you, did you think that was Riot, or did you think that was Venom that was going from person to person? Because at first I thought it was Venom, but I'm like, why is he?
Right.
Why is he like going on a rampage, killing people? Like,
yeah.
Like, what's made him so angry?
I don't recall the first time I saw the movie what I thought, but I probably didn't think it was Venom just because I figured it was going to get to Tom Hardy kind of faster than that, I guess. But I do remember thinking this time around, that, I mean, obviously Riot and Carlton Drake they become symbiotes or whatever, they get together, but I do remember thinking like Carlton Drake is one villain, and then we have this ominous villain that we keep cutting to in a in like another country in the beginning, and I was kind of like, where
is this going?
Yeah, where do we have two villains in this movie? Type of thing. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's just it was okay, but it was like the fact that they introduced like Riz Ahmed had 3 symbiotes, and I guess 2 of them died. One of them gets into Tom Hardy, and then the 4th one ends up finding Carlton Drake.
Mm-hmm.
It just seemed kind of, I don't know. I almost wish the other 2 hadn't died.
Right.
And it had been Venom against 3. I think that would have been kind of interesting, but I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I do think it's weird that they had a little, I mean, like, the little girl looks kind of creepy, so I can kind of understand why they did that for visual reasons, but it makes very little sense that a little girl could just wander into the Life Foundation.
Yeah, like I said, this movie is definitely a rough draft, because there are the like you said, it's got a lot of plot holes,
right?
And the writing is just very, very thin, which should be easy, because a lot of times when you put too much into writing, you get a lot of plot holes from oversight.
Mm-hmm.
That's happened in the MCU, but it's weird that it's as simple as this story is, it's still got quite a few plot holes in it.
Right. Yeah. And the little girl thing, I guess that's considered a plot hole, and it's something you can overlook because it's not super important. Like, obviously the symbiote that was in those characters had to get to the villain eventually. But it just, I feel like they could have done it a little bit better.
Yeah, there's like, why make a big deal of him, doing the experiments,
right?
If the Riot symbiote was just gonna find him anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I almost feel like they should have had it be like, once he realized that the host, like that Venom, could bond with Tom Hardy, it's like he should have then experimented on himself and been like, okay, this is possible now. I want it, type of thing.
Yes,
rather than just Riot showing up and being like, you, It's like he just, because honestly, it could have been any other person that encountered that little girl. It could have been that Treese guy, although that guy was dead, I think, by that point. But it could have been any of his like security detail, because I don't think Riot knew that Carlton Drake was the guy behind everything. It was just coincidence that he was there, I think.
I mean, maybe, I don't know, because then you run into another plot hole. I was gonna say, and maybe symbiotes have some kind of instinct on like who they want to bond with, but then you wouldn't, if that were the case, then there wouldn't have been so many failed experiments. They probably just wouldn't have bonded with that person if they had that instinct.
Although I guess in those situations, they only have one option, because they're locked away in that room.
Yeah.
And that person, that's the only person they got. So maybe they do.
Yeah.
And maybe that's how Riot was able to stay alive for as long as he did, going from person to person. But I also got the impression, why go from person to person? I got the impression that if he was going from person to person, it was because those people were dying. But maybe not. I don't know.
I didn't think about that.
It's because the movie doesn't really say anything about it. It just shows them going from person to person for no reason. So yeah, I don't know. I did write the one, like, I didn't take very many notes during this movie, but one of the notes I wrote, and they do address it at the end of the film, is Michelle Williams comes and saves the day as female Venom, basically.
Yeah. Venom.
And she kisses Tom Hardy, and during the kiss, the symbiote goes back over to him.
Yeah.
And I wrote, Michelle Williams is now with Dan. Anne is now with Dan. She's not with Eddie. She cares for Eddie, sure. But would she actually kiss Eddie? And I thought, no. So then I thought, that was Venom. So Venom is kissing Eddie. And then at the end of the movie, they even say, she goes, that was your buddy's idea.
Yeah, his idea.
And so I just thought, that's okay.
Weird.
Whatever.
Yeah, but you just roll with it.
Yeah, whatever. Just kind of, it felt like they needed, or it felt like somebody, again, I feel like this was probably a Sony executive or something, felt like they needed Tom Hardy and Michelle Williams to kiss. There needs to be this kiss moment. Well, they're not together anymore. We'll have it be when she's Venom or whatever. It just felt, it didn't.
Like, but why would she do that?
Yeah, it was weird. I don't know. I didn't buy it.
Yeah, that's happening right now.
I'm a little past it. I'm at the part where Riz Ahmed is Riot, and he just turned his hands into those big knives and
oh yeah.
I guess cuts everybody in the room, but because it's PG-13, you can't really show that, so he just kind of pushes everybody out of the way.
Yeah, that's what I assumed. He pushed everybody out of the way, but he made such a big deal out of it. He why would you make these blades to not cut anything?
Right, exactly. Dull blades, I guess. So his whole plan is to get on the rocket, go out into space, and bring more symbiotes to Earth, right?
Yes, they were gonna attach themselves to everybody on the planet.
They're gonna bring back millions of symbiotes and take over Earth.
Yeah, and then do what?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's just they're looking for a new planet, I guess. They were on a comet. The symbiotes they found, they said were on a comet. So were they searching out, looking for a new planet to take over because theirs was dying or something? Is that ever even explained?
No, I don't think so, but that makes sense. Maybe the comet that they're on is a piece of the planet that blew up. And
it could be, yeah.
I could see that. Yeah.
Why does Carlton Drake go with the plan? Oh, I guess so. Carlton Drake did talk about how if the symbiote can survive off humans, then the humans can survive off symbiotes, and so he makes it seem like it's this whole thing where it can probably cure disease or things like that, but really that doesn't seem to be the case. I don't know. It just seems like kind of a weak villain plan.
I think what it is, he's detached from humanity because he has no regard for anyone's life.
Right.
So I think at some point he probably did care about like curing disease and cancer and stuff, but some point along the way, like in like some backstory we don't see, he just became increasingly discompassionate. At least that's how I would like to see it, because I overthink things. So.
No, that makes sense. Do you have any opinion on the score of this film, the music?
I like it.
Yeah,
I actually really like it. Ludwig Göransson did the score, and I'm a big Ludwig Göransson fan.
Yeah.
I didn't know he had done the score before I saw the movie, but when I saw his name on the credits, I was like, that
of course.
Makes sense. Of course it was Ludwig Göransson.
I actually did not really notice the score very much, so I don't know. I think it serves the movie fine. It didn't really stand out to me, but I'm also a fan of his. So, I don't know. Part of me kind of wants to find the score on Spotify or something and check it out and listen to it and see what I think about it. But watching the movie this time, I never at any point was like, oh, this music's awesome. I didn't really notice it, which isn't a bad thing necessarily. I think it served the movie okay, but yeah, nothing really stood out, I guess, to me.
Now I'm on the final battle, which I do like. I'm really
at this. Like it is cool. It is very CGI heavy.
Yeah.
And it almost has that kind of Transformers problem where you can't really tell who's fighting who. They do they do make Riot a different shade. So Venom is black and he's kind of almost this grayish
white. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can kind of see it that way. But I do think it's a cool scene. The part that I'm at is where Eddie got stabbed And now the rocket's about to take off.
Yeah, on mine, he just ripped the symbiote off of Eddie.
Oh yeah, I know that part.
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of neat too, that it kind of, that was another question. I'm glad you mentioned that scene. What do you think about Venom saying that on his planet he's kind of a loser?
He's a loser.
Yeah.
Again, I like it for the context of the film.
Yeah.
But that is not Venom.
Venom is not Venom. It's exactly what Venom. I thought.
I think it works well for Eddie's arc.
Yes.
Because he's a loser.
Right.
So from
the two losers kind of come together.
From a writer's standpoint, I like it.
Yeah.
But as a comic book fan, I do not like it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I remember the first time watching the movie thinking, when he said that, he was like, on my planet, I'm kind of a loser. I was like, what? Really? But we kind of see that with that scene where we see that Riot is the stronger of the two by the fact that he can just rip the symbiote right off of Eddie.
Yeah.
Which was cool, but
it diminishes Venom.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really go much farther. I mean, obviously, it seemed like for a moment there, it seems like Riot has the upper hand when he stabs Eddie, but then Venom comes right after that and revives him and then destroys the rocket. So he wins. But I wondered what you thought about that, about the fact that Venom is considered a loser.
Yeah, like I said, I see what they were doing.
Yeah,
but that's the wrong character to do it with.
Yeah, I agree. I actually like the end of this movie. So Michelle Williams and they talk that their relationship is fine. They're not going to get back together, but that's, they're both happy. And then, we realize Venom is still alive. He's in Eddie. And they have the whole conversation about, okay, you can only hurt, harm, maybe eat only bad people, very bad people, no good people. And they go into Mrs. Chen's store, and that guy comes back and, says he wants payment, shoves the gun in her face.
Mm-hmm.
And Venom's like, bad guy. He's like, yeah. I actually kind of like the ending to the film. I think it's pretty good. Although it does have that weird, this was in the trailer, it has that weird line where he's like, you'll be this armless, legless thing, like a turd.
Oh, yeah.
In the wind.
I don't understand.
It's a weird line.
What that joke, I mean,
it's obviously meant to get a laugh, right?
It's supposed to get a laugh, but I don't know. It felt very James Gunny, and like the Great Value version, like
right, the Walmart version of James Gunn.
Yeah, it felt very.
That's great.
Generic James Gunn.
Yeah, I forgot there was a Stan Lee cameo in this film. I just saw it. That makes sense because he was in all the Marvel movies before he passed away, but I just forgot about it. But
there was one that he wasn't in. Fan forced it. He did not make a cameo on that.
He thought, nah, I'm good. I don't want to. I'm all right on this one. That's funny. We almost were talking about that. We were going to almost do that movie this week, but we decided to do Venom instead. Thankfully. So yeah, I like the end of the film. I think it works with and then of course I like how Mrs. Chen was like, Eddie, what is that? And he's like, oh, I have a parasite.
Parasite? Yeah, apparently symbiotes do not like
being called parasites. Yeah. I do like that you can't tell at all because there's so much effects and stuff on his voice, but I do like that Tom Hardy is the voice of Venom. I don't know if you knew that, but
I did know that.
Yeah.
I like the idea. I don't necessarily care for the effects that's on his voice.
Mm-hmm.
He sounds like he's underwater.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah. He's so much louder too. I remember in the theater.
Yeah.
When he's like in Eddie's head, he's so loud.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy, but
I guess I'm kind of used to the Spider-Man animated series sound. Like,
right.
Sounded very like
we all have like comic book character voices in our head.
Yeah.
And so then when they get, translated to the screen, you're like, that's not quite
No,
what I was thinking.
that's not it.
I have a great example of that, actually. Did you watch the Invincible animated series on
I have
Amazon?
not.
There's a character in that whose name is escaping me, but he's he's like this government agent type guy, and he's got like a scarred up face. And when I'm reading the comic, I always heard his voice as Rip Torn from, Men in Black, the guy that, forget what his name is in Men in Black. But he always had that gruff voice,
Yeah.
It's kind of like that type of thing. And they got Walton Goggins to play him on the show, who's
Who was
a
not
great
Rip
actor,
Torn.
but like he just kind of had this very soft-spoken voice, and I was like, that is not how I read that guy at all. So that is like the one thing that I didn't. It's not that I didn't like it about Invincible, but it's just the one thing that I was like, that's not how that guy should sound.
Yeah, I completely understand. Like George Clooney is Batman. Like his voice.
Hi, Freeze.
That's not it.
I'm Batman.
Like that's not it.
Right. It's funny because I used to I remember there was a trailer for Batman and Robin. Because watching that film, it seems like there's not any difference between Bruce Wayne and Batman.
No, it's not.
George Clooney just kind of plays both the same. But there was one like TV spot where they did this transition where they started with Bruce Wayne, and he says, "Will you?" And then it like dissolves, and he's in the cowl and says, "Help me." And he actually does do a different voice. It was like, "Will you help me?" But it wasn't quite as dramatic as that. But I remember thinking, oh, he does do a Batman voice. It's just not much. Anyway, do you want to talk about a rating for Venom?
Yeah, sure. Let's
finally decide on what stars we're going to give it.
I think I've decided, but you go first.
Okay. For me, this is totally an enjoyment score. I think there was never a moment watching the movie today where I was just like, oh God, or anything like that. It was, I had fun watching it today. I think when you sit down and start to really think about it and talk about it like we're doing, stuff starts to fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
But just watching it and turning your brain off, I think, like you said, and I don't think there's any problem with having movies where you can just turn your brain off and enjoy it.
I agree.
And so that's how this movie kind of falls into that category. And so for me, I'd probably give it 3 out of 5 symbiotes. I think it's enjoyable. It's not a great movie by any means, but it's fun.
Yeah. I agree with what you said. However, after talking about it, I have decided to give it 2.5 stars.
That's what I almost went with 2.5. Yeah.
Because I do enjoy this movie, but it's weak.
Yeah.
It's enjoyable, but it's weak. And
right.
So a lot of it is lazy, and laziness in filmmaking
bugs you. Yeah.
I can't.
Can't forgive it.
It's easy fixes that they just was like, this is okay, this is good enough. And I don't like that, so I got
this will please the fans enough or something.
Yeah, I gotta go to 2.5 on this one, but that's cool. I do enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I debated the whole time. I was like 2.5 or 3, 2.5 or 3, and I ended up going with 3. But maybe it honestly probably is more of a 2.5 movie. But one thing we forgot to talk about real quick. What did you think about the post-credit scene with Woody Harrelson?
I liked it. I really liked it. I remember being excited about it when I saw it in the theater.
Yeah, me too. I thought it was cool that they got Woody Harrelson to do it. I forgot that Ruben Fleischer did Zombieland, so that makes sense that Woody Harrelson was in that. But
I thought they got the perfect guy to play.
And he looks cool,
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where I don't think they ever mentioned his name, Cletus Cassidy, but when he says, there's going to be carnage, I was like, oh, of course, yes. Right. And so, yeah, I was excited about it too. And, obviously we'll have to talk about Venom, Let There Be Carnage another day, but yeah. Well, we'd love to know what you think about Venom. You can always let us know at cinemaheroes.com, or you can tweet at us or post on our Instagram. Both handles are Cinema Heroes. You can also leave us a comment on our Facebook page, facebook.com/SM and SM Podcast. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to leave a comment below. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. And tell your friends, you know, if you like what you hear, let people know, you know. So we'd love it. We'd love to hear from you any way you want to reach out to us, though. But I think that about wraps it up for this episode. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm Jake Stu.
As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing.